might want to sit down for this one, because Hollywood just dropped a bomb so loud. Even the Beverly Hills housewives paused mid-champagne sip. After months of silence, whispers, blind items, deleted posts, and suspicious award season smiles, Teyana Taylor has finally broken her silence. And trust me what she revealed about Pierre. Baby, this isn't a breakup. This is a betrayal wrapped in a scandal dipped in a Hollywood cover-up for months. The internet kept asking, why did Teyana walk away from a man the industry treated like the next Oscar season Golden Sea? Hild? Was it jealousy? Career tension? A mysterious third presence lurking behind the scenes? Or did Pierre have an entire double life crafted like one of his film characters, method acting included? And just when fans thought it couldn't get any messier, the name Kelvin Harrison Jr. slipped into the conversation like a plot twist no writer's room could have predicted. Suddenly, the whole industry started squinting, whispering, and pretending not to sip the tea that was clearly boiling over. Tonight, we're not just unpacking drama. We're diving into Tiana's truth finally unleashed and the betrayal Hollywood tried so hard to keep buried. Buckle up. This scandal has receipts. The story begins long before the public meltdown. Long before Tiana's voice shook the internet. Long before Hollywood insiders started whispering like church ladies outside a scandalous Sunday service. The truth is this: the breakup wasn't sudden, wasn't random, wasn't just a celebrity couple drifting apart. It was a slow burn, a pressure cooker, a quiet ticking bomb that everyone close to them heard but pretended wasn't happening. Teyana Taylor didn't wake up one morning and decide she was done with Pierre. No, she reached that point after months of confusion, suspicion, and watching a man she once trusted turn into someone she barely recognized. The world saw chemistry, sex appeal, a rising star who seemed humble and charming. But Teyana? She saw the mask slipping. She saw cracks. She saw inconsistencies. And maybe, just maybe, she saw things she wasn't supposed to. It all started with changes so small, nobody took them seriously. One minute, Aaron was supportive, affectionate, and fully present. The next, he was distant, distracted, overly emotional about things that made no sense. He would play the victim in arguments that didn't even exist. He would twist conversations until Teyana felt like she was apologizing for things she never did. And whenever she tried to get clarity, he would break down, claiming she didn't understand him, claiming he was under pressure, claiming Hollywood was changing him. But here's the gag: it wasn't Hollywood that was changing him. It was the hidden world he was building behind her back. Friends started noticing his behavior too. He spent long hours texting people she didn't know, people he refused to name, people whose numbers weren't saved under their real names. He became overly protective of his phone, walking around with it glued to his hand like it contained nuclear codes. And whenever Teyana asked him who he was talking to, he'd snap, accusing her of being paranoid, accusing her of being controlling. Meanwhile, everyone else could see the changes. He wasn't just hiding something. He was living in a whole different emotional universe. And then came the whispered rumors. At first, they sounded ridiculous, too dramatic even for Hollywood. But the thing about rumors is they don't start unless there's smoke. And baby, there was smoke everywhere. Insiders claimed Aaron was getting a little too close, a little too emotionally intimate with certain young male actors he had recently worked with. Not just friendly close. Not mentorship close. Not brotherhood close. This was closeness that made people stare a second longer. Late-night rehearsals that turned into overnight conversations. Private meetups that didn't match his schedule. Messages that seemed way too tender to be professional. When the whispers first reached Teyana, she dismissed them. She believed in loyalty, in trust, in giving someone the benefit of the doubt. But doubt became harder to ignore when Aaron's behavior matched the rumors better than it matched the truth. He became overly defensive whenever someone mentioned those boys. He would over-explain or under-explain, depending on the day. One moment he'd claim they were just talented kids he wanted to uplift. The next, he'd shut down the conversation entirely, acting like mentioning their names was an attack. And yet, he was showering them with attention he wasn't giving to the woman he lived with. He'd cancel plans with Teyana, but show up instantly for these boys' emergencies, which always seemed to happen at strange hours. Even people outside their inner circle noticed the shift. They saw him comforting these boys in ways that made people raise an eyebrow. They saw emotional dependency that didn't match a mentorship. They saw affection disguised as vulnerability. And they saw Teyana trying to hold all of this together while the world assumed everything was perfect. But that wasn't even the real breaking point. The real breaking point came when one of Aaron's closest industry friends accidentally slipped during a party conversation. They mentioned a trip Aaron took, a trip he had told Teyana was strictly business, a trip where he claimed he barely had time to breathe. Except according to this friend, that trip wasn't business at all. It was emotional escapism. It was him spending nearly the entire weekend privately with one of those same young male actors. No public sighting, no witnesses, no press. Just the two of them in a secluded rental home under the guise of creative character work. Teyana didn't react right away. She stayed calm, too calm. But inside, she felt something break. Not because she believed Aaron had cheated in the traditional sense, but because she realized she had been sharing her life with someone emotionally bonded to everyone except her. Someone who fed everybody his softness, but gave her only stress. Someone who created intimacy with strangers but conflict with the person who loved him. Someone who seemed more alive around these boys than he did around his own partner. And then the Kelvin Harrison Jr. situation hit like a meteor. Suddenly, the closeness that people had whispered about wasn't limited to boys trying to break into the industry. No, Kelvin was an established star, respected, talented, charismatic, and very used to generating award season buzz. And out of nowhere, Aaron started talking about Kelvin like he hung the moon. Everything Kelvin did was brilliant, genius, inspiring. He would drop Kelvin's name into conversations where it didn't belong. He would defend him like they shared a soul. And the industry noticed the shift instantly. Every red carpet photo, every backstage clip, every awards event showed an energy between the two that didn't look casual. It looked wrapped in something unspoken, something emotional, something that made people whisper even louder than before. Teyana tried to talk to Aaron about it, but his defensiveness became explosive. He accused her of being jealous, insecure, unable to handle his friendships. But Teyana wasn't insecure, she was observant. She saw the way Aaron lit up around Kelvin, the way his voice softened, the way his body language shifted. She saw how quickly Aaron would drop everything if Kelvin called. She saw how deeply Aaron valued Kelvin's validation. And she saw how their bond crossed lines that partners weren't supposed to ignore. This wasn't about sexuality. It was about loyalty, emotional honesty, respect, boundaries, and Aaron broke all of them without hesitation. The world still thought Teyana was holding onto a perfect relationship, but behind the scenes, she was dealing with a man who had emotionally checked out long before he physically walked away. A man who was chasing something she couldn't see but could definitely feel. A man who seemed to be searching for connection everywhere except at home. The moment everything truly fell apart was the night she saw a message pop up on Aaron's phone. It wasn't explicit, it wasn't incriminating, but it was intimate. To intimate. The kind of message that two people send when they share a bond deeper than they admit. The kind of message that confirms every whisper, every suspicion, every doubt she tried to ignore. She stared at that message and knew instantly this wasn't a partnership anymore. This was her carrying emotional weight while he explored connections he never confessed to. That was the night she realized she couldn't fix what wasn't hers to repair. And that was the night she decided her silence was over. The moment she realized she couldn't fix what wasn't hers to repair changed everything. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't make a scene. She simply sat there in the dim glow of the living room lamp, staring at the message that confirmed the emotional betrayal she had been feeling for months. A simple line of warmth from someone who wasn't supposed to have that level of access to Aaron's heart. She didn't even need the context. The tone alone told her the truth. It told her there were conversations she never heard, moments she never witnessed, emotional exchanges she was never a part of. It told her he had already given pieces of himself to someone else, maybe multiple someone else's, and none of them were her. It told her she was the last to know in a relationship that she thought she was holding together. When Aaron finally walked into the room, he didn't know she'd seen anything. He didn't sense the shift. And that told her something too. A man who felt guilty would have noticed. A man who cared would have fumbled, stuttered, shown signs of discomfort. But Aaron walked in casually, humming some melody he probably stole from his latest emotional muse. That calmness told. Emotional muse. That calmness told her he'd been living a double life long enough to be comfortable with it. So she stayed silent. Because silence wasn't weakness this time. It was strategy. What makes this whole thing even messier is that the outside world still believed they were a united front. Red carpets, soft smiles, award season energy, fans screaming about how beautiful their bond looked. But behind the scenes, Teyana was living with a man who gave her the performance version of himself, while the real version was reserved for secret emotional attachments and industry friendships that were starting to look like situationships. She had played along with the fawade for as long as she could, hoping maybe he would snap out of it, hoping maybe the emotional fog surrounding him would lift. But instead, he drifted further away, deeper into the orbit of people who fueled his ego and stroked his artistic insecurities. The Kelvin Harrison Jr. situation took everything to a new level. Because the closeness wasn't subtle anymore. It wasn't something she could pretend not to see. They shared inside jokes that she wasn't a part of, deep eye contact that lasted too long, and private conversations that seemed to carry more emotional weight than anything he shared at home. Their bond made people uncomfortable in a way nobody wanted to articulate out loud. It was vulnerability disguised as collaboration. It was support disguised as devotion. It was to men acting like they were sharing one emotional brain cell and loving every second of it. At one industry event, Tiana watched as Aaron leaned in to whisper something to Kelvin. Not a quick comment. A slow, soft whisper that made Kelvin smile in a way that said the joke wasn't meant for anyone else. She stood there, drinking water she suddenly wished was tequila, trying to figure out when she had become background noise in her own relationship. When the event ended, Aaron asked why she was so quiet. She didn't bother explaining. What was the point? She wasn't competing with another woman. She was competing with a world he built outside their home, full of emotional intimacy and hidden connections she didn't sign up for. The cracks widened quickly after that. Aaron became even more guarded, disappearing for hours under the excuse of creative work, only for fans to catch glimpses of him sharing moments with those same young male actors who kept orbiting high. As life, there were videos of him hugging them in ways that looked like comfort or closeness or something else entirely depending on who was watching. And the internet did what it does best. It speculated. It analyzed. It compared timestamps. It found matching outfits, matching captions, matching energy. The whispers became louder. The blogs became bolder. And Tiana realized she was losing control of the narrative while also losing grip on her personal life. What hurt her most wasn't the rumors themselves. It was that Aaron never tried to shut them down. He let people speculate. He let the internet talk. He let industry insiders gossip. And every time she brought it up, he turned it into an argument about trust. He acted like she was overreacting, like the emotional intimacy he shared with these boys and with Kelvin was harmless, normal, innocent. But nobody in Hollywood believed it was innocent. Not when late-night visits became early morning returns. Not when private dinners became full weekends. Not when emotional breakdowns in front of these boys became more frequent than honest conversations at home. The emotional distance between them became so wide that even their closest friends noticed. People who once admired them as a power couple started giving her sympathetic looks. People who knew Aaron started pulling her aside to ask if she was okay. Some even hinted that Aaron had been acting different for months, changing his personality depending on who he was around. They weren't accusing him of wrongdoing. They were telling her he was lost in an identity crisis, searching for validation in places she couldn't reach. Things reached a boiling point when a private message between Aaron and Kelvin leaked online. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't obviously romantic, but it was tender. Too tender? The kind of language people reserve for someone they feel deeply connected to. And the internet reacted instantly. The message went viral within hours. Fans dissected every line, every comma, every word choice. Some defended Aaron, saying it was normal friendship. Others claimed it was emotional infidelity. And then there were the people who believed this message was only the tip of an iceberg. Teyana didn't respond publicly, but privately, she felt humiliation settle into her chest. She had protected him for so long. She had defended him. She had stood by him. And this was the repayment. Not just emotional betrayal, but public embarrassment disguised as innocent artistic vulnerability. She realized then that staying silent was protecting a man who had never protected her. She realized she had given loyalty to someone who treated loyalty like a costume he put on when cameras were rolling. The arguments that followed were different from their usual disagreements. They weren't about small misunderstandings anymore. These were arguments filled with resentment, disappointment, and truth. She told him she felt abandoned emotionally. He told her she didn't understand him. She told him she felt like his life was filled with secrets. He told her she was imagining things. And every time she brought up the closeness with Kelvin or the boys, he acted like she had insulted his entire career. But deep down, he knew she had seen too much. He could no longer hide behind excuses or victimhood. His mask was slipping faster than he could adjust it. The night everything finally fell apart happened quietly. No dramatic shouting. No broken dishes. No slamming doors. Just two people sitting in silence, realizing they weren't on the same page and maybe never had been. Aaron sat across from her, scrolling through his phone, checking messages from people she didn't know. She watched him, wondering how many versions of him existed that she had never met. And in that quiet moment, she felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She didn't want to live in confusion anymore. She didn't want to compete for his attention. She didn't want to fight for a spot in a life he had already filled with emotional replacements. So she made the decision. Not out of anger, not out of pettiness, out of self-respect. She wasn't going to stay with a man who gave his heart everywhere except home. She wasn't going to raise her kids in a relationship full of secrets, whispers, and emotional distance. The next morning, she told him it was over. And for the first time in a long time, he had nothing to say. The moment Tiana quietly walked away from that chaos, she didn't slam a door. She detonated a silent bomb. Because the entertainment industry loves one thing more than fame, a good downfall. And suddenly, people who had been whispering about Aaron for years finally felt brave enough to talk. Assistants who once kept their heads down started dropping cryptic posts. Stylists who used to call him mysterious were now calling him method with a side of manipulation. Old co-workers from theater projects began saying, "Oh, now y'all see what we were talking about." Hollywood wasn't shocked. Hollywood was relieved. It was like everyone had been pretending he was deep because he spoke slowly and stared into the distance like a poet who reads his own Instagram captions for emotional nourishment. But now, they were ready to expose him like an unfiltered close-up. And here's where the story gets even darker. Because according to insiders, the relationship wasn't just romantic chaos, it was a full-blown psychological chess game. Every time Teyana tried to pull back, he allegedly responded with dramatic, manipulative episodes. We're talking midnight monologues about abandonment, existential spirals, crying on cue, the whole audition in the living room performance. And the wild part? People claim he did the exact same thing with Kelvin Harrison Jr., except this time, it wasn't a love story, it was a slow, subtle pull of emotional control wrapped in creative bonding. Because, according to crew members, Aaron has a pattern. He gets close to someone, builds trust, then uses that emotional access like leverage. One moment he's vulnerable. The next moment he's rewriting your boundaries and calling an artistic connection. People close to the situation say Teyana started noticing the overlap. The little things first. The way Aaron would get strangely defensive whenever Kelvin's name came up. The way he'd refer to him as a misunderstood genius even when no one was talking about him. The way he'd act irritated if Teyana mentioned Kelvin receiving praise. The way he'd suddenly disappear for hours on creative retreats, only for pictures to surface of him having cozy, overly intimate conversations with Kelvin on set. And let's be honest, maybe it really was just friendship. Maybe it was artistic bonding. Maybe it was two talented men sharing a craft. But when your partner is acting sketchy, secretive, and overly attached to one particular person, it doesn't matter if the relationship is romantic or not, it feels like betrayal. But the most shocking revelations came from someone who worked on a project with both Aaron and Kelvin. They claimed that multiple cast members noticed Aaron displaying possessive behavior, almost like he wanted to control Kelvin's emotional energy. Whenever Kelvin talked to someone else, Aaron allegedly inserted himself. Whenever Kelvin got a compliment, Aaron claimed he helped him unlock that emotional depth. And whenever Kelvin had a big moment, Aaron allegedly said things like, "They don't understand him like I do." Again, maybe it wasn't romantic. Maybe it wasn't physical. But emotional entanglement can be just as destructive, and that's exactly what people think Teyana realized too late. Because according to a source, she began to feel like she was sharing her relationship with a man who wasn't even in her relationship. Not in a love triangle way, but in a my partner's emotional loyalty is somewhere else way. Because when one person starts treating another adult like an emotional lifeline, that becomes the third ghost in the room. And when Teyana allegedly confronted Aaron about it, he didn't reflect, didn't apologize, didn't reassure her. Instead, he allegedly spiraled into the same pattern: guilt, tears, drama, monologues, which left her exhausted, drained, and mentally done. This is when the industry started whispering. Suddenly, casting directors were hinting that Aaron's dedicated emotional depth was actually mood swings. Producers claimed he was intense to work with in a way that isn't cute anymore. Makeup artists said he'd stare in the mirror too long, psyching himself into character like he was summoning spirits. And people who once thought he was mysterious now started saying he was manipulative, controlling, and dangerously good at flipping narratives. Because the shocking pattern was this: every time a relationship ended, romantic or platonic, the other person came out looking like the villain. And Aaron came out looking like the misunderstood prophet of deep emotions. And once Tiana ended things, the pattern got even louder. According to insiders, Aaron allegedly started telling people he was the one who was emotionally mistreated. That she didn't understand him. That she wasn't supportive enough. That she didn't nurture his inner child. Meanwhile, she was the one paying bills, handling real life, raising kids, and dealing with his unpredictable storms. And honestly, Hollywood women are tired. They're tired of men who show up with trauma, but no therapy, depth but no accountability, passion but no emotional maturity. And Tiana wasn't going to be another burned out caretaker to a grown man who treats his pain like a personality trait. The fallout hit fast. Suddenly, multiple insiders claimed Aaron had similar dynamics with other women: intense charm at first, then emotional dependency, then guilt tactics. And a shocking number of people came forward anonymously claiming they had experienced that same emotional pattern. Some said they thought he was the love of their life at first. Others said they felt drained, controlled, or mentally exhausted by the end. And that's when the industry started putting the puzzle together: the patterns, the emotional tactics, the blurred lines, the obsessive creative bonds. Suddenly, the picture wasn't mysterious at all. It was disturbing. People began speculating that Aaron's closeness with Kelvin wasn't about romance. It was about ego, about control, about wanting to attach himself to Kelvin's rising success. Because, let's be honest, Kelvin Harrison Jr. has been on fire. Award nominations, critically acclaimed performances, rising stardom, everything Hollywood loves. And according to insiders, Aaron allegedly used that connection to boost his own image, calling it mutual inspiration when really, it looked like he was clinging to Kelvin's momentum. Some even claimed that whenever Kelvin got praise, Aaron took it personally, like it was supposed to reflect on him too. And when Kelvin started getting bigger roles independently, word is Aaron became distant, bitter, and artistically jealous. But the biggest twist? Sources say Kelvin started distancing himself because he noticed a shift. He reportedly felt drained, pressured, overwhelmed by Aaron's emotional expectations. And when Kelvin pulled back, Aaron spiraled again, which Teyana noticed. That was the final straw. Watching someone you love crumble whenever they can't emotionally control someone else, that's the kind of realization that wakes you up. And now, Hollywood insiders are whispering that Aaron is quietly blacklisted from certain sets. That producers don't want the emotional intensity circus, that casting directors don't want the risk, that assistants don't want the psychological gymnastics. No one wants a walking storm disguised as a tortured soul anymore. And meanwhile, Tiana? She's glowing. She's booked. She's peaceful. She's thriving. And that's the biggest clue of all, because peace never follows a manipulator. At the end of the day, the truth isn't just that Pierre allegedly betrayed Teyana Taylor romantically or emotionally. The deeper scandal is that he allegedly used relationships with women, with men, with colleagues, with friends as stepping stones, emotional ladders, career leverage disguised as vulnerability, the charming exterior, the soulful eyes, the intense conversations, all allegedly crafted to lure people in only to drain them later. And now, with everything surfacing, the rumors, the patterns, the whispered testimonies, the industry is finally asking the real question: was Pierre ever the mysterious genius people thought he was? Or was he simply a master manipulator hiding behind artistic darkness? So now that every layer of this scandal has been peeled back like a rotten Hollywood onion, I have one question for you. Was this ever love? Or was it all one long performance from a man who treats real relationships like rehearsal scenes? Because Teyana Taylor didn't just walk away, she escaped. And the more that insiders talk, the clearer it becomes that this wasn't a breakup. It was an intervention from the universe. But I want to know what you think. Do you believe Pierre was genuinely overwhelmed and misunderstood? Or do you think he was carefully crafting a role where he always stayed the victim and everyone else played the villain? Do you think Kelvin Harrison Jr. was just a friend caught in the crossfire? Or was there something deeper happening behind those set doors that Hollywood still isn't ready to discuss? Drop your thoughts below, because this story is far from over, and trust me, the next chapter is going to be even louder. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next bombshell. I'm watching every corner of this saga, and the truth? Oh, it's just getting warmed up. It's just getting warmed up.